Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Katie, and today we're going to do my January reading wrap up. I read way more than I thought, and this video might be shorter than my usual wrap ups because I am slowly losing my voice. My entire family is getting sick, so I wanted to film this early before Tuesday. It's now Saturday or Sunday, so I wanted to make sure I got all of this done before my voice is completely gone. I have water beside me, so I can take some water breaks. But let's get started. So, about 2 weeks into January, I realized that I think I only read like 9 books. And I was like, oh, this is going to be kind of a slow month. Where apparently I got my wind back because we ended up finishing 24 books in January. I have no idea how I did that at all. But I just had a good time. I found some great audiobooks. I had some books I had to do for a review. So I kind of just I was like, you know what? I'm in the mood to read. I wasn't in a slump. So I just read, and that's okay. And that's okay if you didn't even finish a book this month. That is okay. Just apparently, I don't know what was wrong with me. Okay, so I had only one DNF this month, which out of 24 books, that's fantastic for me, especially since I think I'm about split half and half between mainstream fiction and Christian fiction this month. So we were split down the middle, which is very rare for me. So the one I did not finish and quit was called Lenny Marks Gets Away with Murder by Karen Maine, and I was just bored. I made it 30% of the way through. There was like one innuendo at like 30%. But before that, I was just so bored. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about the storyline. I was like, this is like so slow, so boring. It may have picked up after that, but I was like, you know what? I'm done at 30%. I'm sorry, but I was just done. So yeah, that was gone out the door. Well, I mean, it was a NetGalley arc, but yeah, it just wasn't for me. All right, on to my stats, which I forgot. I have a stats page now of all my stats, which I haven't done this page yet, but all my stats are in here, so you guys can know exactly my stats if you're interested. If not, just skip a few minutes. I'll put a timestamp in the description box for you. But I read 24 books. So as far as formats go, I listened to 14 audiobooks and 8 ebooks and 1 physical. Technically, I put 3 physical because 2 of the audiobooks I read like half the book on physical format, so I just put that in there. As far as genres go, I read 1 contemporary romance, 2 mystery/thrillers. I read 7 historical romances. This is my historical romance era. 2 fairy tale retellings. 8 sci-fi/fantasy books, and most of those were sci-fi. And then I read 1 manga, 1 comic book, and 1 romantic suspense. I finished 7,749 pages this month. I went off of Goodreads, so it might not be super accurate, but that's what the pages were. I read 3 books off my own shelves. I read 7 review books. 11 were from the library. 2 were from NetGalley, which I'm so proud of myself. Well, actually 3 from NetGalley if you count the DNF. And then 1 from Kindle Unlimited. So I did really well as far as where all the books came from. And then as far as ratings go, I had the 1 DNF. I had 1 1-star, 1 2-star, 3 2.5 stars, 4 3 stars, 4 3.5 stars, 5 4 stars, 1 4.5 star, 4 5 stars, and 1 6 star. So we did get a 1 6 star this month, which we had more, but that's okay. Now we can go back into all the books that we read. So these are all as far as I usually go by star rating, and then I start with mainstream fiction and then I end with Christian fiction. So this is all mainstream fiction. I have Spy Family, volume, I believe, 12. Yeah, 12. I have my reading journal. 12. And I gave it 2.5 stars. It's just kind of going downhill for me. I'm not as invested in the characters as much anymore. It still has quite a bit of violence in it, and I'm just like, I don't know, it's just not for me. And I'm like, okay, I'm on volume 12. Like, how many volumes are going to actually be in this series? Because if I'm that far in, it's kind of hard to stop. But it's like, honestly, I'm just kind of bored with it, especially since it's that long of a series. I just want to see the end result of the case. So yes, it's okay. And then I read a book called Trouble Island by Sharon Short, which I really, really thought this was going to be 5 stars because it's set on Lake Erie, which is where I live, but it's set in Ohio, not in New York. And I was like, I thought this was going to be great. And again, I was kind of bored with it. It did have one love scene, but it kind of cut off really quick, so I was able to skip it really quickly. But I was just, I don't know, I wasn't that invested with the characters. It's about a woman who is kind of on this island because she committed a crime where she was, and so the people who own Trouble Island decided to take her in. Well, the people on the island also deal with the mob and everything. So it's like set around the 1920 era. And so there's a lot of that going on. There's a mystery going on. There's a crime. The twist in the book did get me, so that's why it got a little bit higher of a rating. It was 2 stars. But as I said, it was just kind of a slow-paced mystery until pretty much the end. So it was sad that I didn't enjoy it more. Then I read a middle grade called Olivetti by Allie Millington, and I gave this one 3 stars. It was pretty good. It's about a typewriter that can actually talk through words. He types his own words, and it's also in the point of view of a boy and his family. So the boy's mother ends up disappearing, and they're trying to figure out what happened, what's going on. And Olivetti is the typewriter that his mom used to own, and his mom ended up pawning off the typewriter for money. And the boy ends up finding the typewriter, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. So it does deal with triggers of illness in the story as well. But I did enjoy it, but it was a little bit more slower paced. Middle grades have been hit or miss for me lately. I really enjoy them, or they're just kind of meh for me. So this one is just more, it was okay. Mr. Nice Spy by Tiana Smith. It was only 3 stars. This is the second book in her spy series. I will say it is a clean romance. There's no language, but I will say the kissing scenes are quite heavy in her books. So they are on the verge of doing something, even though they don't. But so that's why it kind of gets a lower rating. And this one I just found a little bit more slower paced than the first book. I enjoyed the first book more, I think. And will I continue the series? I'm not sure yet, honestly. This one's about, I don't even think they're really connected, if I'm being honest. I don't remember if the characters were from the first book or not. But in this one, we're following a girl who somehow gets involved, of course, with spy business. And you know what? I can't even remember. I think it's because I'm sick. I can't even remember what it was about, if I'm being honest. It's just been one of those mornings. But yeah, as I said, it was just kind of more slow paced. I really wasn't a fan of the romance and the 2 characters. I just felt like, I don't know if it's a forced romance for me. No, not really. But I just really wasn't a fan of the romance in that one. Then I read, it's been a long time since I have been dread an author so much in 1 month. I read 6 books from one author this month. Well, listen to the audiobooks because the audiobooks were fantastic. So I will say these books do have very graphic violence scenes in them. So if you don't want that, I would skip it. But I will say, besides that, there was no language and no love scenes. So aside from the graphic scenes, they were completely clean. So I was very surprised, honestly, that they were, because they were mainstream fiction. And I put them under sci-fi because I actually didn't have a category for horror, because I don't read a whole lot of horror. But her books are definitely more towards sci-fi horror and also thriller, because there was a couple thrillers. But I read 6 books by Darcy Coates. 6. I binge read a series by her, 4 books. I binge listened to them in like 5 days. And I listened to 2 audiobooks, which were over 400 pages each, in a 12-hour day. Apparently, I was doing nothing that day, because I cannot believe I still did that. But we're going to start off with her, solo books, not series, standalones. Wow, that word completely left the room. Standalone. So I read one called Where He Can't Find You. This one was only 2.5 stars. This one was definitely sci-fi horror. But it is definitely more, I would say, lighter horror. But this is about a killer who kidnaps people in like this small town. And I thought it was happening like all over the world, because that's kind of another series that I was reading by her. But no, it's just in this small town. Yet people like don't want to leave apparently. I'm like, why wouldn't you want to just leave? And apparently nobody really wants to leave the town. But people end up missing, and then they end up being found somewhere in the woods or wherever. And so they're trying to figure out, okay, who did it? What's going on? These group of kids. This is more, it's YA thriller. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of YA thrillers. So this one got a little bit of a lower rating, but I found a little bit more slower paced. I was just more invested in finding out who did it. And then by the end, when I found out who did it, I was like, really? Really? I was like, I don't know. For me, it would have been better if it was what I thought it was, if that makes any sense. But so they finally discover who did it. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's definitely more, I would say, it has that sci-fi aspect to it as well, so it's not completely like real world thriller. And then I read one called Dead of Winter, which I gave 3.5 stars to, and this one was good. I listened to it in the dead of winter, and I enjoyed it. As I said, if it did not have the graphic scenes of violence in it, it probably would have gotten a higher rating, because I do really like her writing. Her writing is really good. So we're following these strangers who are on a bus tour. And let me tell you, the ending got me. Even though I guessed who did it, something happened to make me think, oh, that's wrong. And then by the end, there was a total twist, and I was like, oh, I was not expecting that. So I did really enjoy it. But as I said, if there wasn't so much graphic violence, I would have given it a higher score, probably closer to 5 stars. But this one, following a group of people, as I said, on a bus tour. They're going up into the mountains. It's snowy, dead of winter, and something happens with it. There's a tree that's in the way of the bus, and so this couple goes off to like look at the scenery and stuff, and they end up getting lost. Well, the girl ends up finding her way to a cabin where the rest of the people are, and so they're trying to figure out, like, you know, like where are they going to find their way to the lodge that they're supposed to be at. They're in the middle of nowhere, and her boyfriend's missing, so they're trying to figure all that out. And something happens where there's like a bodiless head found, and that's where it gets graphic. And so I'm like, yeah, it does get graphic that way. But I was there for the mystery. I was there to find out what's happening, and it was pretty much like a and then there were none situation, where like each person in the cabin is getting picked off one by one. So like I was invested in it. I really was, but I could have done without the graphic scenes, let me tell you. But I did really enjoy the storyline. Next is her 4-book series that I finished. I think it was called Black, I can't remember, Black Waters or Backwaters, something like that. But this was I can never say this word, apocalyptic series. So it's kind of like the end of the world type series, where it was almost like a zombie, but they're more monster looking, I would say. But the description of the monsters were definitely more on the graphic side. But I loved the storyline. And there was a romance, but it was a clean romance, which I was happy about. But in this series, we're following this girl where right in the beginning, something's wrong with the world. Something's going on. Everything's going crazy. What's happening? And she's trying to find her way to her sister's bunker. And so her car breaks down, and she ends up walking in the middle of winter in the woods, and she finds this big castle, and she's like, okay, what's going on? So she ends up coming here, where this strange man is kind of a recluse. His family's not the greatest. They kind of just left him there, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And there's all these weird, strange, creepy creatures going around, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, because apparently humans are changing into these weird, scary creatures. And so it's a 4-book series apparently, and some of the books were really long. But as of, you know, the actual storyline, I loved the storyline. I ended up giving book 1 3 stars, book 2 3.5 stars, book 3 3 stars, and book 4 4 stars. So overall, as I said, if the graphic scenes weren't as graphic, this series would have probably been closer to 4 to 5 stars. I just really enjoy kind of like a sci-fi light horror book. I don't like very, creepy, horror books. Like, I'm not that type of person. But for some reason, her writing just drew me in. So yes, it's Voices in the Snow, Secrets in the Dark, Whispers in the Mist and Silence in the Shadows are all the book titles. But if you can get past the violence, the storylines are really great. So yes, I will definitely be trying more of her books. She does write a couple of ghost stories, which those I'm going to stay away from. I am not a huge fan of ghost stories, like real ghost stories. Like, I like the ones that have an explanation, but I have a feeling hers are going to go more real. I haven't tried them, so I don't know. But I do like more of her thriller / sci-fi series. So yes. All right. And then our last book for mainstream fiction was The Highlander's Hidden Castle by Deborah Chapotin. This is book 3. Yes, book 3 in her Loved by a Highlander series. And I gave it 4 stars. I love this series so much. It has such a great romance feel. It's set in Scotland with Highlanders, and it's just such a sweet series. If you find them, they are on Kindle Unlimited. Do not come at me for the covers, okay? Because they're shirtless guys in kilts, but they are completely clean romances. It cracked me up. It's like, really? So, but on Goodreads, they're clean covers, so you guys aren't yelling at me. But yes, I thoroughly enjoy these. They are completely clean, only kissing scenes, and I just really love it. Barely even any kissing scenes, honestly. There's like 1 or 2, but I love this series so much. So this started following I was going to say a girl and a guy. Of course we are. It's a romance. But anyways, we're following one of the Highland brothers from the previous books. And he is supposedly, he's the 3rd son. They're kind of like, the other 2 brothers kind of got to marry who they wanted to marry. And he's like, well, I don't want a prearranged marriage either. And even though he does get one. And so he's like, well, I'm going to run off and hopefully find this missing castle that his mom used to take him to when he was little. And he ends up finding it. Well, he also finds a woman who's also running away from a prearranged marriage. And it's just so sweet. There's Highland games as well. I love seeing that. I would love to go to a real Highland games in Scotland. It just looks like so much fun. I would love to do that. I just realized, I realized I'm wearing Irish colors today. Well, it could be Scottish colors too, but it was such a sweet story. I love the romance. If you can get past book 2, because book 2, the first half of the book is like a retelling of the first book and just in a different perspective. I didn't like that, but this one was a completely different story, and so is book 4 going on because I just started book 4, so really enjoyed it. All right, on to all of the Christian fiction books, which most of them, except for 1, I do own physically, so that's good. This is probably going to be my lowest rating. No, it is. It is my lowest rating of the month, and I'm kind of sad about it. And I'll tell you why. So this is called Soul Wars Lexi by Florence Whitcomb. And this is kind of a spiritual warfare book where we're following a girl who moves into her aunt's, I think it's her aunt's, seaside cottage to work on her small business. And she is kicking up a friendship / romance with the guy next door who's kind of building up his house. Well, in the middle of the night, she's hearing a strange voice and saying, "You're mine, Lexi. I'm going to have you. You're mine." And she is creeped out and freaked out every single night until she hears a voice next door that's singing songs very off key, but they bring her hope and joy. And so they kind of spark up a friendship, and they're kind of trying to figure out what's going on. So there's definitely that demon aspect and spiritual warfare aspect, which I was definitely intrigued by. But I will say, the writing style is not great. The romance, it was okay. But I will say, the 2 of them did go and get help from a preacher and a missionary. Good step. What I didn't like was that the fact throughout this entire book, they did mention faith and they did mention praying. And they got the church to pray for both of them during their battle. Well, I was looking and I was paying attention. There is no mention of Jesus or God in this entire story. And if you're going to battle spiritual things, you need to mention Jesus or God. Like, that's literally the only thing that can help you in this situation. And yes, as I said, they did mention faith. They did mention prayers and the church. But I felt like the 2 main characters were so deeply invested in themselves and them fighting the spiritual warfare instead of letting God be there and to protect them and stuff. Like, I just felt like it was more about I can do it versus he can do it and only he can do it. So yeah, I really did not like that. So I definitely only gave it 1 star. I don't even know if I would give it that, honestly. I was very disappointed with the fact that there wasn't more of that. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like if you're gonna tackle a spiritual warfare story, I think you need to have more of the characters relying on God rather than on themselves. You know, like he was bound to protect her, like you need to go through me in order to get her. But I was like, he really didn't want anything to do with the church. He's like, okay, you can pray if you want to, but I'm just gonna go after this bad thing. And I'm like, you really need to pray about it, and you need to seek, he did seek, like he was talking to the preacher and the missionary. We didn't really get to see their chats and stuff, but it's like, I just didn't get that from that. So that's going to be an unhaul for me, unfortunately. I already did my unhaul video, but that's going to be an unhaul. Next is Steel Fire from the Gods by Clint Hall. And I thought this was going to be like one of my top rated books because the cover is gorgeous. I love Enclave Publishing, but this one, it was only 2.5 stars. And I will say probably one of the only reasonings was this book is only 200 and about 10 pages. 210 pages for a sci-fi, I would say sci-fi, high sci-fi story. And so you're not getting much backstory. You're not getting much concept to it. And I felt like for me, it was just too much packed into too little. I feel like if he added another 150 pages and fleshed out the action, fleshed out the backstory of what was going on, I feel like this could have been a 4 or 5 star read. But because it was so short, just for that reasoning, I think it only got 2.5 stars because I did not get a full story. I felt like there was not a full story here. So this sort of following a young soldier named Gunner, and he's lost his faith and his family, and these AI machines are kind of taking over the world. Well, they have taken over the world, and they create fire and electricity and stuff like that with different powers. And so he's trying to figure out how to create these powers. Well, without faith and without God, he obviously can't do it on his own. So he ends up discovering kind of this group of, I was gonna say like not highway bandits, but just highwaymen. What is it called? I was gonna say they're not bandits, but just like they're kind of on their own. It's a bunch of different people that actually do have powers. And I don't know if they mentioned God specifically, but you can tell that they got their gifts from the Lord. And so I think they do actually mention the Lord and how he gives gifts and stuff. And so he's kind of learning alongside them. I wish there was a little bit more faith content as well in this, but I did like I liked the action of it. I liked, trying to figure out, okay, how can we defeat these artificial creatures and stuff. But as I said, it was just super short, and I think we just needed a lot more in the story. Headwater Holiday by Hannah Hood Lucero. This is a technically like set around Christmas time, but I feel like you can read this at any time. I give this one 3.5 stars. I felt in the beginning it was a little too insta-love, and I love, love at first sight. To me, there's a difference between love at first sight and insta-love. I feel like love at first sight, you kind of get that hint of love, and it's just like, little trickles here and there as it grows and grows and grows. I feel like insta-love is like, punch in your gut, hey, we're already in love, let's just fall in love. And I'm like, this one was definitely more insta-love for me. And this sort of following a woman named Becky, and she is part of the Navy, like secret force and stuff, and she ends up going to a small town in North Carolina, and she runs into the like deputy sheriff, and he's also on the case of a big, what could be a globally catastrophic thing that's happening in this town. They're trying to figure out who's involved, trying to figure out what's going on, and it talks about his family too. I really liked his family. There was kind of a little bit of, as well as like there is mental disability rep in here as well with his family on his family side. And I really loved the mystery of it. But as I said, it was just the insta love was just not hitting me. But I will say the banter between the two characters I really did enjoy, and I ended up liking the characters more as the story went on. So I did enjoy it, and it was short too. I think that one was also on Kindle Unlimited if you want to check it out. Then we have 21 Stones by Janice Belkoff. This is book 1 in Leap Limit, and this is a time travel book, which I love time travel. I gave this one 3.5 stars, but this one could have been closer to 4 stars. I just think because like the last half of the book, it kind of felt very much like she got influenced by Quantum Leap, which is an 80s TV show. I think it's 80s. And it's one of my favorite TV shows. But this guy, he is on like a basketball league or something. Well, something happens. It's definitely sci-fi. I think it's like in the future or something. But his friend is killed. And he is some kind of like learning in college to be a physicist. And so he figures out how to travel back in time. And he's going to try to find the guy who killed his best friend and try to figure out how he can save his best friend. Well, something happens where he is thrown all the way back into Civil War times. And I really loved that timeline. I loved the story about it. And I think I like the first half of the book versus the second half, but it does leave you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. So the second book isn't out yet, but I'm definitely going to continue on because I love time travel. It was a great time. I think I would bump it up to 4 stars because it was really good. Even if it was short, she did pack quite a bit, but it didn't feel like forced packing, if you know what I mean. The Miracle of Peace by Lynn Lanning. This is a Western Christmas magic book. And I will say, literally, I think like the last chapter or the epilogue or something, that was it as far as Christmas goes. So I'm not exactly sure why it's like got like a Christmas feel to it because it really was not. But aside from the non-Christmas feel, I love this book. I gave it 4 stars. This is about Clarissa. And Clarissa, actually, it could be Clarice. It could be Clarice. Not sure how to pronounce her name. I think it's Clarissa. I like the name Clarissa. But anyways, so she is part of like a highway bandit group. And something happens where her father and another bad guy are kind of in a fight, and she ends up running off. And she ends up running into this man named Jeremy and his ranch hands who are transporting some cattle back to their ranch. Well, she has no idea who to trust. I mean, she came from a very untrustworthy family background with those bandits. And so she's trying to figure out, you know, can I trust these people who just found me in the middle of the woods? Like, she was worried they were going to hurt her. So she decides not to say anything. So they mistakenly think she can't speak or doesn't know the language. So they kind of just take care of her. She helps cook for the farm hands and stuff as they're traveling. And she's trying to figure out, you know, what's going on. Okay, these guys are pretty trustworthy. They're actually really nice to me. So there's like a little bit of a romance blooming between her and one of the men. And also the adventure of, is somebody chasing her and wanting to get her back? It's really good. Plus it's got that small town feel where she goes back to his ranch place and his town, and kind of the backlash of her being a new person to the community, plus also that she is, I believe, half Mexican or something. So they're like, we're not used to that in our community. But it was just such a great read. I loved the romance. I loved the story. I loved the adventure kind of style to this story. So definitely check it out. I think it was really great. As I said, can be read at any time. So as I said, literally like the last 2 or 3 pages were Christmas. Yes, so you can read this at any time. And I have another book by this author that I already read. And I have a feeling she's going to be a new favorite author because she just has such a great storytelling, especially of like these Western stories. And I really liked it a lot. That was also on Kindle Unlimited, if you're wondering. So was 21 Stones. Next, we have Cloaked in Beauty by Karen Whitmire. This is the final book, I believe, but she could be coming out with her own indie published books in this series. But this is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, and I've done a whole review on this, so I'm not going to talk much about it. I'll leave it down below if you want to check it out. I'll leave my playlist. But this one was about Letty, and Letty is kind of was sent away with her grandmother because her life was put in danger. Well, a Pinkerton agent later on is sent by her mother to go find her and bring her back to society about 10 to 12 years later. And so to claim her birthright. And so there's a little bit of danger going on. Like, will they make it back into society? Hopefully. How does she cope with going back into society? I give it 4 stars. And I really did enjoy it. I still like the second book in the series, which was If the Boot Fits. That was my favorite, but I did still really enjoy this one. I'm going to take a water break. My nose is getting stuffy, can you tell? It's like going away slowly. All right, we only have about 6 books left to go, so we're getting close to finishing. Next up is The Juliet Code by Paperbacks, which is book 3 in her Gracie and Freddie series. And I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Kyra Curse is still my favorite. And it was funny. I mentioned Kyra Curse was my favorite. And I think I shocked Pepper Basham. I don't think she thought I was going to say that one, but I love the Kyra Curse. Anyway, so in this one, The Juliet Code, we're following Freddie and Grace as they try to continue their honeymoon in Venice, and there's a little bit of an art mystery going on. Grace's purse is stolen, like right in the beginning of the story, and kind of these 2 robbers kind of integrate themselves into the story, and we're trying to figure out who are these art thieves, what's going on, and I really enjoyed it, and I think I would have, this is one of the ones where I wish I read it physically. But it was nice to buddy read, though. I buddy read this one with my friend Caitlin over at the Chronicles of a Book Nerd, so I'll link her channel down below. But we buddy read this. We both listened to the audio, which I do enjoy the audio, but I think I enjoy these more physically. But I just love Freddie and Grace. I think they're such a sweet couple. I love their banter. I love the romance. It's so sweet. And seeing kind of like a married couple, we very rarely see stories about a married couple. Like, I would love, I don't have an idea for it yet, but I would love to write stories with a married couple because I just feel like I want to see that growth of relationship between 2 characters. It's just so great seeing that. Then I read my very first book by T. Cooper. She's an Australian author, and I read The Naturalist's Daughter, and I gave it 4.5 stars. I loved this one, and the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars was because at the ending of the audiobook, I kind of got confused. I think I was doing something and then I lost it. I lost track of that audiobook. And I was like, oh no, I lost track. So for that reason, I didn't quite give it 5 stars, but her writing style is great. The history aspect of it was great. It's dual timeline, but both timelines are in the past. And I just loved it so much. I will say, I'm not sure if she's a Christian author. I don't know. But there was 1 or 2 swear words in it, but like nothing, super drastic or anything in it. But I just, as I said, I loved this one. I loved the storyline of, actually, you know what? It's very rare that I say this, but I loved both timelines. I really did. So, well, it could be because they were both historical timelines. I just realized that is very true because I don't normally enjoy modern timelines as much as historical, but because both of these timelines were historical, it's probably why I enjoy them more. So this one, we're following a woman who is trying to locate a journal, and she goes to this old woman's house because this woman has a journal to give to the museum that she works for. Well, she goes and the lady has passed away, and her daughter is kind of all about, I need money to pay off my husband's debts, so you aren't going to get the journal until I figure out how much this thing is worth. So she's kind of working with the solicitor's son of the estate to try to figure out, okay, like the grandmother promised the journal to us, or the mother, like what's going on. And so then we're following a even more past timeline where we're following how the journal got created. And it's about the man who created the journal plus his daughter. And the journal's all about the platypus, which is such an odd creature that God created. It's like, it's part amphibious, part mammal, and no wonder scientists were so confused by this creature. I mean, it's confusing, but supposedly these journals were like first like real encounters of a platypus and how it was discovered that it really is a mammal. And it was just such a great storyline. I loved it. I love the historical time periods, as well as like that interesting aspect of science and stuff, and talking about the platypus. I just found it so fascinating, especially like I get really fascinated with like zoological stuff as well. And I'm like, this is just so fascinating to me. I loved it. And yes, it was thoroughly enjoyable. And definitely check it out if you have not checked out her books. I will definitely read more of her books. Then I read the Seaside Homecoming by Julie Clausen. This is the third book, and there is another one coming out next year. That's probably going to be the last one, I'm guessing. But I did really enjoy this one, almost as much as the first one, but not quite. But I have a whole review on this one as well. And this one is about the eldest sister, Claire, and she's been disgraced and sent away. And she's pretty much told, or her family's pretty much told not to talk about her. Like, she never existed. And her sisters are like, you know, they still love her. Like, what's going on? And so she finally comes back to their seaside hometown, where she has invested in a rival hotel and from her family's. And so there's a little bit of a mystery going on if she could trust her employer. He's got a sweet little daughter who's absolutely adorable, and there might be a little bit of romance involved. So it was very, very sweet. I loved it. Definitely has that Little Woman feel. If you're interested in Little Woman style stories, check these out. Between Stairs and Stardust by Pepper Basham. This was our buddy read this month for our Christian book club, because we had the prompt a fairy tale retelling. So we chose this, which was a Cinderella retelling. And I had her on my channel. I'll link that down below as well, the chat that we had with her. Feel free to go ahead and watch it when you're done with this book. This is also, is it on Kindle Unlimited? It might not be, but if it's not, it's super cheap. It's like $2.99 or something on Kindle. But I love this story. It was such a sweet story. It's set at Biltmore Manor in Asheville, North Carolina. We're following a girl who's a painter, and she's kind of hiding because there's rumors going around that that she may have been in some unscrupulous actions, even though she wasn't. But rumors do spread, and so she's kind of hiding at Biltmore Manor, where she runs into this guy who she thinks is the gardener. And it's just such a sweet story. I love the nod to Cinderella in this, and I tabbed it up like crazy. There was just so much sweet romance moments and Cinderella moments that I loved, and it was just such a sweet story. I absolutely adored this book. It was so sweet. So I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. And I hope to make it through my entire Pepper Basham backlist. So that's one. Also, thank you to my friend Chrissy, because she sent it to me for my birthday, I think last year. So thank you, Chrissy. And then I have The Girl from the Hidden Forest by Hannah Linder. I read this one. This was actually my first book I finished of the month, I think. And I read this one while on my vacation, and I loved it. It was great. We're following a woman who has lived in a hidden forest named Eliza, and she's lived there pretty much her entire life. And so she thinks that the man who has been with her is her father. Well, she ends up getting kidnapped by this guy and saying, no, your father is in this other place and you were taken from him years ago. And she's like, no, my father is in the forest. And so she thinks she's kidnapped. She's sent to this place, but all the pieces kind of just slowly go together on how this mystery happened, what went wrong, what's going on. And I just thoroughly loved it. I loved it was almost like a fairy tale a little bit, but like a unique fairy tale. And I just really loved it. It had a lot of action in it. It had a lot of mystery and intrigue, what's going on, who did what. But I loved it. I thought it was really, really great. So it was so good. You got to try it out. And then the last book that I have, which was my favorite book of the month, and that is To Trust a Heart by Lynn Lanning. This is the other Lynn Lanning book that I read, and it was great. I love this one so much. This is part of a series, but they're all written by different authors, which I was kind of sad about, because I'm like, I would love more by her. It was really good. So thoroughly enjoyed this one. It's about a man named Austin, and he has been married to like the girl of his dreams. Well, he finds out that she's not so much a girl of his dreams. She is absolutely awful and terrible. And so he ends up divorcing her because she's absolutely, she's absolutely awful. And he pretty much says, I don't want to be with a woman ever again. I don't want to have that heartache ever again. Well, something happens where he runs into this woman who is on the run. She's been hurt so many times. She's been sold and traded and used for gambling debts. She has had a horrible, horrible lifestyle. Well, somehow he ends up finding her, and God tells him, you need to help this woman. He's like, I don't want to be with another woman, like not right now. It's been, too soon since my divorce and stuff. And like I don't but God's like, you need to help this woman. So he does, and it's just the most sweetest romance story I think I've ever read. It's one of the most sweetest stories I've ever read. The romance is so sweet. Just the kindness that Austen puts with what's her name? Fern. Just Fern and Austen are just such a sweet romance couple, and I'm finding my love again of Western romances. I haven't had the love of Western romances in a really long time, and I think I've read like 3 or 4 this month, but I loved this one so much. It was so good. So this was a great, great 6-star read. It was so good. So those are all the books that I read. Again, 24 books in probably less than 3 weeks. That's insane. I have no idea what I did. But at least it was a good month. I got a lot of really great books, a lot of average books, but that's okay. So let me know if you've read any of these. As I said, a lot of these were on Kindle Unlimited, so make sure to check them out if you have Kindle Unlimited, as a lot of these were really good reads. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Let me know what your favorite read was for January, as I love talking with you down in the comments, so please leave a comment so I can chat with you. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video.